Hello to a new episode of Media Coffee. Media Coffee is a new series by Cision where we interview journalists from leading media organizations to answer some of the questions that you may have on how to best communicate with the media. My name is Nariman. I'm a media relations executive here at Cision. And for those of you who haven't heard of Cision before, we are a global provider of earned media software and services for PR agencies and communication professionals. If you want to know more about us, please feel free to visit our website or drop us an email or follow us on our social media accounts. I have the pleasure to welcome Sanjay here. Sanjay is from Asian News International, or ANI, which is a media provider for news in India. Could you please start by introducing yourself?
Yeah, hi, I'm Sanjay Mehra. I'm the head of multimedia at ANI. Just a brief background about ANI. We are India's largest multimedia news agency, and we go back way beyond 50 years. We are now the prominent players in South Asia in the television, the multimedia, audio, and all segments. And basically, we provide news to everybody in the world, including, of course, mainly in India and across the world through our tie-up with Reuters. So we are basically a global player based in South Asia.
Could you please just let us know a little bit about the media landscape in India?
Well, basically, like anywhere else in the world, we have, the television, you've got the internet, you've got newspapers, you've got magazines. So that way, it's really not any different. The only thing about India is, there are two major markets. One is the English market, and then is the vernacular market, because there are hundreds of languages in India. So, every state has its own this thing. So like you have, let's say, national giants, which basically have a presence in English. You have vernacular giants, which go state-wise, right? So, and the news being the same, but again, in different languages. And of course, of late, the last, say, 7-8 years, the online thing has become almost half the market. In fact, it's overtaken the traditional media. And of course, it's like anywhere else in the world. There's a lot of dependence now because there are over millions and millions of hand phones and smartphones in India, and everybody's accessing news. Yet, there are small towns and small cities across India, being such a vast thing with almost 30 states, that, the old traditional newspaper still is around. But it's definitely changing towards online. That's basically what it is, yeah.
A lot of people always ask, are press releases still valuable? Are journalists still interested in press releases? So what's the attitude in India around press releases? Are they looking forward still to receive them?
Well, let me answer that in two stages. Number one, it's my belief that traditionally a press release is not, it does not go down very well with serious media, okay? So what I'm going to try and explain in the second half is how to, counter that. Typically, everybody's opinion about a press release is that it's going to be a pat on my own back kind of an article, obviously eulogizing the person or the product, etc., etc. So obviously it's taken with a pinch of salt, as far as authenticity goes, because it's coming from the horse's mouth itself. So what we do to counter it is, the strategy which ANI has adopted is that we insist with the clients, or through agencies like yours, who then further give the feedback to the clients, is to make it like a news item. Okay, do not make it like a press release. And a news item, you will get a bit of everything, but not too much that a person loses interest in reading the whole thing. Again, as an example, let's say a company has launched a new product, right? In a pure press release form, that would go into thousands of words with tables, etc., because the client wants everybody to know everything good about their product. Now, typically, if I, as a reader, forget me being in the media as of now, but as a reader, if I were to read a news item, say between 250 to 500 words, giving me the facts, giving me a quote from, let's say, the promoter or the the management of the company, and also of some critics to balance it out. That suddenly changes from being a press release to a news story. And this is the experience I've had over the last, say, 20, 25 years, is the minute we started doing this, the readership has gone up tremendously, because see, what ANI does is we get the releases from you. We advise our clients as to how to rewrite the article to make it more newsworthy. And then once we carry it on our side, we also distribute it to all our partner sites. So being on ANI automatically means being on 100 other sites who are our distribution partners. And the feedback we've received from them is the format in which we are now sending it. The number of clicks on their sites have increased. So I assume that a person would like to read that thing in a news format and not in a pure press release format.
What you said is actually interesting, and it drives me or leads me to ask you more about the press release itself. So you said make it more like a news item. So what are the things that you want to see there that would attract your attention, aside from the quotes and the things that you just mentioned, in terms, for example, the language, the type of words to use, for example, the length of the press release?
Yeah. So basically, the kind of language has to be very business-like. Typically, like press releases can be from a variety of subjects. For instance, we just spoke about a product. There are a lot of releases about an artist's new song. There are a lot of things about new film releases. So the typical thing, the language has to be such just to be very clear. The minimum of adjectives that are used makes it more genuine. Language has to be just like, as I said, in a news story. The typical thing is that it has to be not more than 4 or 5 paras. Okay, let's say an introduction, and then you come down to actually what the product is or what the film is about, maybe a quote or a bite from the director, and then about the company or about the production house or something like that. So this is what actually interests people, because A, they're getting the information they need about that particular event, and B, they're not being forced to read things, propagating themselves. So that we are very clear on. That is a complete turnoff for even agencies. I mean, I refuse a lot of press releases which are purely promotional. And that is part of ANI's editorial guidelines. We are not going to be doing something which is self-promotional, because that defeats the purpose of it being a news item.
And how important it is to have or attach an image or a video or a link to the press release? Is that important for you, or do you prefer?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, in fact, our software does not allow for a press release without a picture. Because, a picture says a lot, which may sometimes be missed in a press release. So our formatting of our website and all the people we distribute to, without a picture, the release doesn't go. So pure text just doesn't go. And video, of course, is welcome. But again, as I say, when we distribute to our people who take our content, a lot of them might not want video. So it's really not up to us. But on our side, more, the more the thing, a visual, a video and the text would be an ideal combination.
I assume as an agency like ANI, it's a big agency, so probably you're receiving a lot of press releases in a daily basis. How do you scan these press releases, and how do you decide on which one to post and which to post?
Yeah, so firstly, I have set down some editorial guidelines for ANI, because there are certain kind of things we carry and don't carry. So we have a whole team which deals with press releases. So the minute it comes, through a mail system, it comes to everybody who matters. The editorial and the technical people, comes to me, and if it falls within our guidelines, it's actually an editorial judgment whether to carry it or not. Because, as I said, there are certain things in those guidelines which are a gray line. So for us, authenticity is the most important. If we find a release about, let's say, a new medicinal breakthrough, we tend to avoid it unless, it's peer reviewed in a scientific journal, unless it has a government authority like the FDA or even in the Indian, the ICMR, etc. Because, we've landed in a hot soup by just posting something with the disclaimer that this doesn't belong to us, but end of the day, it lands up on our platform. So we have to be very careful. Like in India, to give you an example, gambling is banned. So as an agency, I cannot carry any article even remotely connected with gambling, because then I'm under the lens of my government procedures. So every country, I guess, has some regulatory kind of thing which agencies who are carrying releases have to take care of. So it goes through intense vetting. First, the first line of defense reads it. Then it goes to the sub-editor. Then it goes to the editor level. And if there's any doubt, then it comes to me. And then we take a call to see whether this article should be carried or not. In routine cases, routine business stories, it's much easier because no red flags have been raised. So that's the way it actually works in an agency like us.
Something interesting that you said, and I think it's really important for client to understand as well. How do you prove or check the accuracy of press releases?
Yeah, so basically the onus of that lies on the agency sending it to us. So for instance, PR Newswire, okay, or any other agency which sends to us, I have been informed, they are the first fact checkers. And along with the release, they ask for a lot of documents. For instance, if a company is posting its results, right, and those results, then they call for that filing from the company, where they have to file it with the registrar of companies, etc., so that they get some kind of idea that it's authentic. Because see, nobody can be 100% safe from these kind of claims. We still do get things which we pass back to. See, an agency is only a medium. We have got a disclaimer. I mean, we are not responsible for any of that content, but in every story, like for instance, somebody is making tall claims on, they've got so many, and they've been registered as so-and-so with the registrar of companies. So the PR agency calls for those documents along with the release before sending it onward to us. And then we have our further sets of questions. So actually, at the end of the day, before it goes out, it's pretty robustly checked. So that danger is avoided of people just making things. And again, we don't do releases, let's say, for matters which are sub judice. Okay, like some matter is in court, and on one day the court has passed something, and the matter is still to be heard with the other party's point of view. What happens in very many cases is on that day where one party has got a favorable view from the judge, they send us a press release saying, please release it. This is a matter of court record. But we say no, because it's not unbiased. If I just take one side of the picture, we'd rather wait till the conclusion of the case, right? So that the judgment lays out what went in this favor, what went in that favor. So it's actually a pretty robust system.
Thank you so much for that. From your experience, you've been working for a long time, obviously. So from your experience, what are the common mistakes that PR professionals or comms professionals make when they write a press release?
I've already touched on this all through this talk. One is the writing style has to be very businesslike. At times, when you use flowery language, it's a giveaway. People, before even reading past the first line, know it's a press release. So it's just, it stares you in the face, right? Because you'd never expect a business story to start that, or something serious to start that. Number two, as I said, the mistake PR agencies make is, again, in the length of the article. At times, it is too long, goes on to 2-3 pages, which is, frankly, nobody reads it. Nobody has time to read it these days, okay? Because everything is now consumed globally through an online media, and it really, you read the headline, and if it doesn't interest you, you don't go further than that. So headlines are very important. I've noticed, how I grew the ANI brand was through giving very catchy headlines, factual yet but catchy. So it cannot be very long, because then a person, basically today, 80% of readers basically read the headline and then they decide whether or not to read the article. If they get enough from the headline and they want to know more, only then they will read that article. So the writing style is critical for a press release. Not too long, no adjectives, factual, and very down to earth. Once that happens, and between 250 and 500 words, if a script writer for a PR agency or for a company were to follow this pattern, I think the acceptability would increase manifold. So that's the few mistakes they should avoid, because I do not entertain that. Maybe others do, but I'm just giving you my example.
When you're writing for an Indian audience, do you use, for example, like British English or American English, or is there like specific things that they should be aware of in terms of language specifically?
Yeah, basically, it's a hybrid in India, both American and British, but very heavily leaning towards British, because, you know, we are basically a ex-British kind of, we have this background. So all the mainstream newspapers, the television channels, internet sites, they are almost 100% British. There are a lot of people, you know, who are not so serious about the, I mean, couple of American words come in here and there, but typically British. So if anybody is sending a press release to, let's say, India, it should definitely be in British English. Not that being in American English will be a no-no, but it's just because it's the culture here to read and write British English. So that's a big pointer. So, you know, it will obviously be different in the US and other countries which use the American style, but that's not a deal breaker really. It's not a deal breaker, but preferably in British English.
How do you like to be communicated by PR professionals? Do you prefer that they follow up, for example, by a phone call or by an email?
Definitely not a phone call, only email. Because it's very obtrusive. And, you know, an agency like ours where we get hundreds of mails a day as well. But again, from people who do not have tie-ups with us. And I do not encourage that, because I know that, let's say with an agency like Cision, I mean, your sister, your group company, PR Newswire, I know the credibility of PR Newswire. And that's why we are in business for so long. Because I know at the first stage itself, I'm not being set up by somebody who I don't know any background of. So typically, if any random person were to call me up and say, look, can we send you a mail? I'll say, bye-bye, thanks, I don't have time for you right now. Because I don't know where they're coming from. So definitely by mail, otherwise it's too obtrusive. I mean, it just spoils your mood. Over-enthusiasm is the worst thing a PR professional can do. I mean, for them, it's their livelihood, but I'm saying as people on the other side of the table, it becomes too aggressive. So definitely only email. And of course, one other thing, it should not be an aggressive follow-up. You know, because typically what happens is the minute a mail comes and for 4 or 5 hours, nothing has happened. If anybody then follows up again, it's a no-no. Because they don't understand that we have hundreds of things going on besides press releases. We are a news agency. ANI is doing about 500 stories a day from India, from South Asia, from everywhere. PR is part of the thing. So when you get a very aggressive follow-up, it puts you off.
And by aggressive follow-up, you mean to follow up too quickly?
Yes, too quickly, or you know, maybe the next day you can follow, because everybody understands, you know, that press releases, unless you have a tie-up with an agency, they're not. It's just a shot in the dark. Very, very, very few agencies or newspapers or any news outlet today carries any PR sent randomly by some PR agency who they do not have a contract. So it's just like taking a shot in the dark. But again, today credibility is the main thing here. We do not want to jeopardize our credibility.
Absolutely. And is there a best time or day to send a press release?
Not really, because, you know, we, like, even with your news agency or your PR agency, we are doing things 24/7 by 365. So there's a separate department we have. round the clock. Of course, it's always preferable in working hours, because at times mails sent, let's say, early morning, let's say India time, or late night India time, there's a different kind of staff that is there, So the editors and all are not really there 24 hours. So it's always preferable to send it during working hours so that it gets the prompt attention. Because at times it can get left out just by omission because of the sheer volume of mails which are coming.
Thank you so much, Sanjay, for this. Any last recommendations you would like to tell our clients and audience?
Yeah, just to encapsulate what I've said, be frank, be straightforward, keep it abridged, do not use flowery language, and be very clear of your facts even before writing them into the press release.
Thank you so much again. I appreciate your time. This is the end of our episode today. If you have any questions or would like to know more about us, as I mentioned, please send us an email or follow us on social media. Thank you so much.